You got to get into the market and really understand who you're selling to.
I think humans are going to be very needed when it comes to sales. 6 months, ChatGPT has ads, over under. What do you think? We used to be able to get keyword data and, okay, look, this keyword gets this amount of visitors, this keyword gets those amount. And now we're seeing that people are doing most of their research in ChatGPT or any type of LLM. I don't want to do a buying process with an AI. I'd like to speak to a human if I could.
A lot is changing really quickly with LLMs. Kind of every iteration and advancement in technology has changed things.
But Perplexity has released a statement where they are actively looking at advertisements. What I saw, the way they want to be doing this is when you ask a query, it's going to look at what you're looking for. If it aligns with a keyword that you're targeting, let's say from Google Ads, they would show the advertisement there.
I hope it doesn't go that way. It's going to lose the credibility of it, the paid dollars behind sponsoring things. I think it's going to lose that.
Lisa, first and foremost, thank you for being here. I said it off the recording as well, but I think I can learn a lot from you. I've seen your resume, just the things I've seen from your line, speak towards things I have a lot of interest in. Now, we did a little bit of an intro before, and you mentioned that you started with graphic design and then wanted to move in-house. Tell us about that.
So, Lisa Sharapata, I'm currently the VP of AI and go-to-market strategy at Metadata. But I've been in the marketing space for over 20 years now. And actually, I did start off in the graphic design in an agency. And I pretty quickly realized that I like the art and science of marketing and really understanding my audience and the data behind things to help make decisions and kind of putting it all together. So I'm a 2-time CMO now, and I've been in B2B tech for over a decade. Worked for companies like 6 Sense and Aprimo, and just still having a lot of fun learning all the new AI stuff coming out.
And I think that's going to have a big impact on this entire industry. We'll talk about that later. First thing I want to touch on is that shift you mentioned. So I looked at your resume, and it's simple to see. Like everything you have done, I think till this far, maybe and since you made that pivot from going outhouse to or alone to in-house, like your track record is fully, I want to understand the customer. Like legit. Like there's nothing, like if I look at 6 Sense, understand your customer. Even right now, Metadata, it's understand your customer, right? CMOs, understanding your customer. So everything I've seen from you thus far is, okay, how can I understand the person I'm marketing to? So it makes absolute sense that you went from, okay, because I see a Lisa that's like, yeah, I need to do this assignment, and then you start asking questions, right? And then, but the questions weren't answered, or what sparked you from going outside to inside? Like, walk us through that.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely. It's so interesting to hear it from another person's perspective, but it's always been kind of human-centric, and I've actually done some classes in that since then, because to me, understanding the problem you're trying to solve, how do you build a relationship with someone? People ultimately are going to buy from people they like and trust. And so really understanding their pain points, what they're trying to solve for, why would they be interested in what you have to offer, to me is the starting point. And in the agency world, I was just finding it was a lot more kind of the arts and crafts, things looking good, very subjective. And I wanted real data, real numbers, what's working, what's not, what kind of adjustments should I make? And also like with intent data, 6 Sense, like what are they searching for? What gives me clues into what their problems are so that I can create a much more curated and personalized, campaign. And yeah, that's what drives me. And I don't know, I think it's more real, but I also find it works better. And I don't want to put all this effort into something and then not see results.
Yeah. I wonder, because I think that's the ideal vision you need to have when you are marketing towards another individual, right? If we're talking B2B, for example, it's very much about the individual you're speaking to, the target demographic, the ICP, right? We want to know who you are, what you do, and everything else. But it's a stark contrast to what we see on a day-to-day in real life. I mean, people just throw ad dollars on whatever and blindly just start campaigns, or lack of tracking of metrics, essentially. So there's a few things I want to touch on with you, like in terms of topics where we're talking. I'd love to pick your brain about GTM. I'd love to pick your brain about ABM. And all of that kind of combines together with what we're seeing in your history. When you look towards finding what your customer wants, needs, like their intentions, essentially, like how do they buy? What are their signals? What's your go-to? Like, if after everything you've learned until now, how do you start? Let's say you start on a new company and you need to build it, you need to grow it. For all our listeners here, how do you start your campaign? How do you start your research?
Yeah. Well, first, I'll say a lot is changing really quickly with LLMs, and kind of every iteration and advancement in technology has changed things. So where I'm starting today is different than 2, 3 years ago. And I'll just to kind of root into that. You know, people used to go into Google and keyword search. And so being able to leverage something like third party intent data kind of gave me a leg up, right? Where I could use that to create more of like an awareness, or like when people were early stage and they hadn't been to my website yet. That was a game changer then. And so that's where I was starting is, obviously doing some research and understanding what is my product market fit? What kind of problems can my problem solve for the kind of people that are buying it today? But then what would be a leading indicator that somebody would be in market to solve that problem? So that was again before ChatGPT and Perplexity and all these new tools came out, where those are all private chats and I don't have visibility into that.
I think you raise a fair point, because we used to be able to just do a Google search. I mean, get keyword data and okay, look, this keyword gets this amount of visitors, this keyword gets those amount. And now we're seeing that people are doing most of their research in ChatGPT or any type of LLM. And when they get there, I just literally had such an interesting conversation yesterday with my guest, James Worth, how the market is shifting. And we're seeing people doing so much more research ahead of time, right? But the benefit is they come to collect, right? When they're ready to come and they're ready to go. So, but at the same time, I hear what you're saying. It's a closed box. So where do you get the data from? How do you know what they're looking for? How do you know what they're talking about? How do you know what they need? So how have you been handling that challenge?
Well, in my case, I'm very fortunate because I'm my target audience now. I'm selling to marketers and I've been in this world, but still it's I'm getting out in the market. I need, as a CMO or any sort of marketing leader, the first thing you need to do is know your market. And so to do that, you've got to get out there. You've got to talk to the people who you're selling to, whether it's conferences, whether it's dinners, whether it's just sending someone a DM and asking them if you could take 15 minutes and pick their brain, talking to existing customers, learning more from them about why did they choose your product? What were they looking for? What was kind of the key things that swayed them? Or, even today, like what are they finding the most valuable? So it's getting, again, as close to the market and as close to the customer as possible is what I'm finding is where you got to start.
So the luxury of having like a bird's eye view and just collecting data from tools, we're seeing that move kind of away, not being as accurate anymore because it doesn't represent the full market anymore. And at the same time, we need to look towards the actual human beings. We need to talk to them, hear them out, get in touch, and also look inwards and what kind of data do we have, right? Success stories, reasons why clients maybe didn't onboard or why they had an unsuccessful onboarding, find out their pains. So it seems like there's still a lot of stuff that we can get. And it seems like maybe we need to do a little bit more legwork, but there's a lot of stuff out there, if I'm hearing you correct.
There is. And look, I'm going to give you an example of just a human-centric concept that really changed the way I think. And this was probably 10 years ago, I heard this at a conference. And that's when I started getting into like IDOU has some human-centric design concepts. But um, this group was charged with trying to help premature babies in third world countries survive. Their survival rate was very low. So they're like, well, we're going to get incubators and send them to these third world countries so that, that's what we would do here. So we're just going to do that there. And we give them access to this. Well, they didn't realize a few things. First of all, they don't have electricity, just to like plug, right? So, I mean, right there was an epic fail. They didn't even go to the village. They didn't talk to the parents. They didn't understand the challenges they were facing. And so once they did that, and they had to rethink everything, and they had to come up with a solar panel version, and they also had other factors like the nutrition. The water wasn't clean. So it didn't matter if you sent them formula with it. The water was a problem. So there was, it came down to is the first thing they had to do was actually get them clean running water and wells. And then, they could think about formula and solar powered incubators. And so like I think that's what's really shaped my thinking a lot over the last several years is you gotta get in the weeds. You gotta get into the market and really understand who you're selling to.
I really appreciate you saying that. And I, I reflect on myself in terms of like our campaigns, for example, and the things we do. And as much as I want to be as close to it, part of me also is like, okay, but how do I get there? Like, I understand what you're saying. You can have a lifesaver of a product, but if you can't turn it on because there's a lack of electricity, it's not going to work, right? And if drinking your product is going to make them sick because the water's sick, yeah, there's a lot of nutrients in it, but it's not going to be good for you. So context about the market is super important. If I'm a SaaS startup, for example, I'm a founder, I'm starting a new company, what's my best bet? Like you said, DMing. Do I go on LinkedIn, find people, send DMs and see if they're interested in me? Do I go emailing? Do I walk outside? I actually heard about this guy that in the US, there was a guy that sat down at Blue something like a coffee shop, and he put his laptop on, and he said he printed out a piece of paper that said free coffee for 5 minutes of your time. And then he got people interested, and they came for the free coffee. They stayed for the chat. They gave him feedback on his product, and he met investors. He met actual potential customers. And the funny thing is, after all the conversations, nobody actually took him up on the coffee because they were like, yo, I had such a great time. So he went away with a lot of free advice. And I think he would have been happy, even though the coffee was there, even though he had to pay for the coffee. But that's a guerrilla tactic. I understand it. And maybe not everybody has the willpower to do that. But how do you start? Like, how would I start? How does anybody start?
Yeah. Well, I'll say again, getting out in the market, I think is number one. If you can do it, if there's a conference that your kind of target audience is going to be at, even if you just buy your own individual ticket and show up, get to know people there, listen to the materials, see what kind of questions are being asked. I mean, that's kind of, I guess, bare bones, but what we've been doing and what I really enjoy is I'll also find a really nice restaurant and do my homework ahead of time and see who I'd really like to invite to go to dinner with me, see if they're going to be there, and try to again get a small like round table discussion together. And I'm not trying to sell, I'm trying to learn. And so things like that. But then another thing I'll say is with LLMs, there's also so much information out there. And if you can, just start pulling that in, and you can, basically prompt your way to get a lot of your answers as well and learn a lot about your audience that way.
So I think the major distinguisher I'm hearing from you is it's not just about being present in the market. You have to really put your ear to the floor, to the ground, and listen. And you have to be willing to learn as well. And I mean, I think there's a lot of people that have a big enough ego that think they know it all, and they've been there. And I look at a younger version of myself, and it's like, yeah, I know everything. Nobody needs to teach me anything. And then I learned, well, it's good to learn. Put your ear on the ground and listen to what people have to say, because the only thing it's going to get you is more knowledge, right? And in this case, knowledge is power. It gets you to where you want to be. It grows you. So listening and learning is what I'm really hearing from you. And we have to find a way to listen. That could be utilizing an LLM. It could be, I like how you said, do your homework about who you want to meet with, who you want to sit with, and just have a discussion, because that opens up so much more. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I'll say, I mean, I didn't really start that way either. And it's just been over time that I've learned. And especially because I've been in a lot of different industries too. And yeah, right now I'm marketing basically to my own persona, but I've been in, for example, I was in healthcare and I was creating a new line of scrubs. I didn't know anything about that. And I thought, okay, this is cool and it's a new fabric and stuff, and people are really going to like these. And we partnered with Jockey and we had a license and all this stuff and, brand name. But when it came down to what I learned the hard way is nurses, people wearing the scrubs care about comfort, pockets. They need pockets for everything. They want them to be easy to wash and care for, and they don't want to have to like iron. They're tired. They get home from work, 12-hour shift. Yeah, they're only going to buy so many sets of scrubs at once. They want to throw them in the laundry and take them out of it, put them in the dryer and put them on the next day. Like they don't want it to be high maintenance. And so learning that changed how I was marketing, the product.
It's so interesting,
Yeah.
because it's
Totally different than tech, right? But it's people are uh, at the center of who people are. It's all the same.
yeah. And I think so. Basically, what I like about this is, and I have a question about this, right? So let's take your go-to market for those types of scrubs. If in a general situation you would just, hey, okay, we have a cheaper product, it doesn't really matter, because you're saying the pushback from the nurses could be mean, therefore they will be so unhappy and they might not want to wear it, essentially, right? And that's the reason why it might not be bought or continued on, and your contract might be discontinued at the point. So doing that research prevents you from becoming getting into that situation, because you now know what they like and what they want. And it's so easy to miss this, right? I mean, pockets. And I think that's product market fit. Like, it's so difficult sometimes to find these little sweet spots. And it just shows that the more experience you have in a market, the better it gets. And the more conversations you have is what I'm hearing as well.
Yeah. I mean, it changed everything from how I did the photo shoots, right? Making sure I had stuff in the pockets, showing, the functionality, you know, all of it changed the whole marketing strategy.
Yeah, because now there's so many more different things that you can highlight and that you can actually target towards the buyers. And you could even hand out samples to the nurses and be like, hey, look, this is what we have. And if they start liking it, it's going to bubble up, obviously.
Right. I mean, and there's more to it than that, right? And it goes in tech. I mean, you're not just going to win on features and function.
Yeah.
People will buy from people they like and trust. I think I already said that. If I didn't say it on this one, I've said it like 3 times today. But you know, I, I think it is a fundamental truth, and I keep coming back to it in this world of AI, because we can do so much more with AI faster. And I think it relieves a lot of burden of what I call like the ing of marketing, the tactical stuff. But I'm hoping what it's also going to do is free us up to know the market, build the brand, create relationships, really take the time to get to know people and what they're looking for. And oh, okay. I saw this presentation from Coca-Cola yesterday, and they're like, we're over 100-year-old brand, but we're not going to change our product. What we're changing and what our whole job is to create experiences that connect with people and connect people to our product. And I think again, and then you got to know your market, and that's evolving. So what's interesting, to this like new group of kids growing up is not necessarily the same kind of experiences you are creating, but there's still fundamental, components of that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm gonna say then also because it's one of my mentors that always taught me people do business with people, not with companies. You can appreciate the company, you can hate the company. If you like the person, that's the reason why you're buying. So, but how that could be a major shift happening, right? I mean, we're talking situations where we have AI calling people. We're talking about situations where AI is handling inboxes. And there are companies like, let's take Sequoia for example, right? Maybe different way because they are receiving applications, right? But they are handling most of their stuff through AI to get a filter. Now I can imagine if you're doing sales, you're doing outreach, whether it's through LinkedIn, email, phone, whatever. There's on the other side of who you're calling or texting could be an AI agent taking care of everything that's coming inbound, just as you could have something going outbound. So to me, I'm like, I go back to this ChatGPT Gemini video I saw where they start inventing their own language and they start talking about things. It's like, well, where's the human connection? Nowhere. And who's going to buy? They don't have purchasing power. They're both going to like ask each other questions for an hour. Yeah, where do we go? Like, any threats you see there? Any concerns, or do you still believe like no, people centric is going to stay the de facto standard?
Well, I think that there's definitely risks. And I think that there's some commodities, for example, and people will start to trust an agent to buy for them. And it may, I don't know how long that'll take agent to agent, but, or I might just even have my like shopping list of things put into ChatGPT and tell it to go on Amazon and find, the best product that has more than 3.7 stars or whatever, and buy it. But when it comes to, at least in my opinion, right now, no one knows the answers, right? But when it comes to a more expensive purchase, and that might be something from shoes to technology and everything in between. I still think that at the end of the day, especially if I'm employed and my job is on the line, I'm going to want to be involved in that process at some point. Like Gartner's got research out that 80% of the buying process is going to be done uh, before talking to anybody. And I think that was by 2026. I mean, I think depends on your industry, but kind of close to being there already. Um, I don't think people love talking to, let's say, an SDR that's just out of school when they're trying to get into the weeds on what a product does. We've built this process today to try to help people get from a point of interest where they're showing, high intent to buy, they're all over your website or whatever. How are you getting them to book a meeting and talk to you if they haven't already? So that's, what there's a gap that was filled by an SDR role or by a chatbot on your website to try to help convert people. But to your point, now when I'm ready, I can go basically from ChatGPT to book the meeting. And I educated myself to a point where I am much further along and a much more qualified lead. And I'm ready to get into the details. And I think that shift, is companies and organizations are starting to try to figure out how to make, because the talk track, the pitch deck isn't going to work.
Yeah,
But
no.
It's
farther in
got
the
it
funnel.
right. They've done their discovery in chat GPT.
Actually, like I love what you're saying here, because if I'm hearing you correctly, because this is my distillation of it, is I mean, I myself am, curious about how AI is going to change the world in that perspective, but I think we're far away from it. I think what I'm seeing also myself is, as you're saying, people are doing a lot of research in themselves using an LLM. But from there, when they're ready to come and to buy, they want to have a high level, sorry, not a high, an in-depth discussion essentially. So actually, what we're seeing here is that sales teams are, I think, going to require even more skilled people. So the intern SDR is actually not going to cut it anymore. And their job could potentially be replaced by AI by handling initial, you know, pain points or objections via email or via chat, or creating content. That an AI can do 80% of those questions and queries essentially. But when you get into the weeds of things, you're going to need a person that can connect a lot of these things together. And that's where an AI currently, I think, falls short. And I mean, I don't want to do a buying process with an AI. I'd like to speak to a human if I could. And I think that essentially will still say, and like you said, also specifically for these big corporate decisions and high impact decisions that have to be made. So I think humans are going to be very needed when it comes to sales, very much so, and even more skilled, more known, and as the buyers become more knowledgeable and get access to data quicker.
Right. And I think that the other thing I'm seeing change really quickly, maybe not so quickly, but brand is the pendulum swing to the importance of brand is coming back, but it's a different way of creating your brand. So again, you might have your short list already when you go into, let's say, Perplexity, and you want to evaluate these three different brands because they're the ones you've heard of. So how do you be one of the ones that you've heard of? And that, to me, that goes back to some of it's conferences and trade shows, places where you can build your brand. It could be, again, getting out in the market in front of people, influencers, TikTok, on people's social channels. Reddit, that's part of why Reddit's becoming such a big thing, also because it's being promoted as that. But because I can do my research there and ask my peers, communities, what's worked for them in the past, I'm forming an impression of your brand ahead of time. And if you want to make the short list, you got to be thinking about how to get in front of people when they're in that discovery mode, with in the natural channels that they're going to.
Because I think, we used to go top of funnel. We do a query in Google. We'd visit 20 pages, maybe 50, so many tabs open. And then you'd leave it alone, right? You'd leave it alone. You'd let it sink in. And when it became important, you'd look again. And now you had your shortlist because you investigated 20 of them. You found some research, and now you're coming back at it. It's like, okay, you know what? I vibed the most with this one, or this one had the thing I really liked. And now you do all of that in, I want to say 5 minutes, but let's put a little respect on Perplexity and ChatGPT. You spend a bit more time there. You can do it in 30 minutes, and you have done what normally would take you weeks of time to discover all of these things. And then you get a recommendation. Hey, this is the route you need to take. It's going to ask you questions. Is this important to you? Is that important to you?
The buying process for sure, and it's even the SEO game, right? And you were talking about, like, gonna type these keywords basically into Google, and then I'm also trying to anticipate that what was in the past, right? But by writing the content, and maybe it's sponsored content, but I'm hoping organically I'm on page one, and now I can outbid my competitor to be there and all that. I think that all of that will be going away sooner rather than later. Or no, that's an opinion. It's not backed up by um, any qualified facts. But I think that Google's starting to get their AI answers. Like, I think they're planning to switch over to that, but then at what point will like ChatGPT have ads in their platform? I don't know.
Okay.
Like, you know,
Over or on over or under 6 months, ChatGPT has ads. Over or under. What do you take? What's your pick?
I'm going to go under.
Ooh, okay. Well, I'm forced to go over now, but I was going to go under as well. Yeah, I think it's going to happen relatively quickly. And by the way, I love how you also call out perplexity because I think it's undervalued that people also switch between these tools. You got to switch it up and get different perspectives. But Perplexity has released a statement where they are actively looking at advertisements. And the way what I saw, the way they want to be doing this is when you ask a query, it's going to look at what you're looking for. And if it aligns with a keyword that you're targeting, let's say from Google Ads, they would show the advertisement there. So super interesting to see how that's going to happen and if it actually will make sense. And I wonder if people are going to be open to receiving either a suggested sponsored response or having ads, or if they just completely ignore it and just continue their conversation. Because I feel like I would maybe look, but maybe I would just do my conversation at the same. I don't know.
Yeah. And I mean, honestly, I hope it doesn't go that way. And the reason why partly is because, again, today with it being closed loop and kind of a private channel, I'm finding the experience to be so much better. And I think people are trusting the experience. But as soon as it starts to get advertising in it, I think it's going to lose the credibility of it, hopefully being kind of non biased and just pulling in, you know, still it's the best structured content and data. And there's still the game of now switching from SEO to AEO. But I feel like it is currently today a more, I guess, pure uh, way of learning. And as soon as there's the paid dollars behind sponsoring things, I think it's going to lose that.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. It's going to lose its purity essentially, and people might distrust the. I mean, if you're in the market or something, and you do a deep research, and suddenly, hey, an ad pops in, you're not going to want that. You want to have that absolute purity, and I want to get my results the way I've been. I get what you're saying there.
I
Yeah,
mean, that's how Google started too. I'll never forget the first time I pulled up a Google and it was just a little bar and it said Google underneath. I'm like, what is this? But then I was like, oh, it's going to just find stuff for me. This is great. Um, but this will evolve. I know it will. It'll just be a question of what and how fast.
I hear you. So let's switch our topic. I'd love to bend your ear a little bit about ABM, if that's okay.
Sure.
So let's walk through what is ABM to you, and why is it something that's important. Let's start with that as a kickoff.
Well, I've been thinking a lot about it, honestly, lately. So I kind of have a different perspective than I did a few years ago. I'll say you have account executives, right? And the reason why in B2B is it's accounts that are buying. It's an account. It's more than one person. There's more than one buyer. And buying groups continue to get bigger and bigger, not smaller. And so you really need to think about what I like how to surround an account and uh, get the momentum going towards your brand over another one. And there's just, I think that it's like the scale. I think it's like once you get 30% or something. I know there's a stat on this, but you start to swing the pendulum towards your brand. And so the idea behind it, I think, was twofold. It was first of all this acknowledgement that you've got these larger buying groups and that you need to have more than just your champion be on board. The other piece is when digital channels started to get introduced and data driven marketing started to come in play, the complexity started to compound for marketers to have to figure out how to get in all these channels, but they also, to have a seat at the table in the boardroom, they had to show results. And it started with leads, but that did not, bode well, right? If those leads aren't converting to revenue, marketing's a cost center and it's not going to work. And so marketers started to realize that the team that controls the revenue is the sales team. And they're selling to accounts. And we need to start aligning the leads that we're bringing in to be to the accounts that they are going to close and win. And so, ICP fit and personas and, all of these things have, like, when I first started, they were not acronyms. They didn't really exist because you didn't have to measure all this stuff. You weren't, look, there was no real way to tell if someone came from a print ad or a billboard or an event, but then you start to get into email and digital channels and the internet and websites. And so I think that there's gotten these kind of two different parallel worlds that have collided to create a need for account-based marketing. And, there's a lot of different ways to approach it. And I think in a lot of companies I know, it's like the 3-letter acronym that's the 4-letter word. It gets very frustrating very quickly.
So you said you thought about things differently than you did before. Now you pinpointed something where, back in the day there was the option to, I would say the world was smaller because internet access was more limited. We didn't have more, so account base was easier. You go to dinner, for example, you would persuade some people. If you had, she said, 30% of the board on your seat, you can go, right? You flame on, let's go. Now we're seeing, then we saw a transition towards the internet becoming more and more accessible. People, like you said yourself, you opened up Google and you saw, hey, this little box can find me things. All right. So it could find me a competitor to, or another vendor essentially. So now the world became a different. And now we're seeing, we had more transitions, but we're seeing digital becoming such a imperative part in any type of marketing and any type of acquisition strategy. So what's the difference, or what's your different view that you've gathered along the way? I'm very interested in that.
When I first got started with it, first it started off with some very simple marketing, talking to sales team, going one-to-one and targeting accounts. And we were doing things like direct mail. This is very early. I'm probably like 2013, 2014. And then intent data became available. And when that happened, again, that became this game changer of how you could start to do account-based marketing at scale and do a one-to-many account-based campaign within a budget, like reasonably and in a targeted way. And I went all in on that, and it was we were seeing results because you could start to build out repeatable, scalable systems and methods to do it. And I think things were not as complex either, right? But it was starting to drive these accounts that were converting at a higher rate than what we were doing without the intent data. And so it started to look really promising. But what I've seen again in the last few years that has shifted for me is, first of all, sales and marketing teams in most companies, there's still a lot of friction there. And if there's friction and you're not all like on the same sheet of music and pulling through, an account and really doing your homework and looking at, okay, now we've got this information and this intent data, and they went to the landing page that marketing created, and they've read this piece of content that marketing created, and they did all these things that marketing wanted, and now sales, it's your turn. And if the sales person, AE, does not want to take their turn and do it the way, it was designed, there just starts to become this big clash. And again, I've seen that more and more. But I think, again, the most pivotal thing I've seen happen is the way people are buying is shifting. And that playbook does not work. The third party intent data is kind of crumbling. So I'm more interested now in like second and first party intent, and really thinking about how to create that brand and experience and be found in the LLMs. And when people are looking on chat or Reddit or talking to their peers, showing up. And to your point, I think the sales team needs to have more expertise. I'm seeing it at Metadata. I'm seeing it everywhere, is because by the time someone wants to talk to someone on the sales side, they are going deep. And so I think that intent data piece and trying to do the one to many at scale A is where I think there's a fundamental change that is I'm seeing happen. And, I'm seeing people create like clay workflows and personalization and, but I think that we need to reimagine the playbook, and that's where I'm at today.
Interesting. Specifically, a company like Clay, raising millions just recently, and now you're here predicting that intent signals might not be the one that we should be focusing on. A very interesting insight, and I can agree with
right third party intent
third party. Yeah. Oh yeah,
because they're vanishing, right? It's
yeah, and I mean to that point. If anything is going to be interesting or leading, it's going to be data, right? I think nowadays, anything that we're doing in this world where, yes, we have the opportunity to sometimes meet offline, but the discovery phase happens online 9 out of 10 times. So specifically, if there's a purchaser that wants to buy, right? If somebody wants to buy, they're going to go out themselves and find things. And this is where the inbound aspect becomes very important, also the measurement of this. And one thing a lot of companies are struggling with is the data collection, the data analysis, right? You've had a past in 6 Sense. I think it's amazing that you can go to a website and identify somebody from this account or potentially this person came. Super interesting. And I see we're underutilizing that. I think that market is still yet to blow up as significantly. I think the LLMs are very much underutilized when it comes to discovery. We have recently, we did a study on access logs, which is a free tip for you as well. It's like find your access logs. I can give you one tip. Find your access logs is going to tell you when ChatGPT and Perplexity visit your website, when they crawled you, which page they crawled you for, and it's going to tell you what your visitors or your purchasers are looking for. A lot of insight here, and man, wow, this is. I'm very interested to have we'll do another deep dive someday going into this. Yeah, right now, I want to.
Let's go part 2 next, because I'll also say, again, marketers have so much more at their disposal. And like what I've been working with at Metadata, so it's digital marketing platform, right? So advertising, but for example, we have a bid agent that is figuring out algorithm and can bid for you 24/7 and help you, optimize your bids to a goal, like you could say pipeline. And so some of those things are changing. And again, I think it's more important than ever to be in the channels where people are, even in their free time, and show up and build that brand. And then the flip side of that too is like Metadata has an MCP server connector now. And so that's in Claude today, ChatGPT, hopefully next week. They've got their APIs open, but I'm in Claude and I have a single plane. I can do everything from Claude. I can analyze my campaigns. I can build new ones, and I can deploy them and optimize them from Claude, not have to leave there. And I think that that's another whole new world. Like that's part 2, is there's just so much happening, advancing the way marketers can work.
Yeah, but I think there's still one thing that holds true. And I think that's something that metadata is trying to accomplish or start trying to solve and is accomplishing very well from what I've seen is insights and accurate insights. There are so many people, and I mean, I don't think there's a marketer in the world that trusts Google Analytics, for example. Nobody will trust it, right? Nobody will trust Meta, and there are so many companies trying to crack this positive metadata is trying to solve, and I feel like they're doing a great job, specifically towards this type of go-to-market strategy, specifically towards this type of marketing where, from what I've seen, like getting your setting up your advertisements, including your audiences, making sure that you use all the data that you have available for you to target them and to reach them even better than you could before. And that's the thing where I feel like I wish, and maybe that's metadata, but I want to hear it from you because the one thing I've always had as a marketeer, my background is in tech, and marketing, and so I know pixels annoying as hell. But when I look at a product like metadata, seeing the data is actually following through, you get actual actionable data. I love the fact that you can talk to it in Claude. But what's the for everybody here? Like, what's the underlying reason to onboard metadata in your company? What pain do you have if you need metadata as a solution?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few pillars to that, and I'll start with just to be able to experiment at scale. So you're talking about this, like you're not just one-to-one going in to LinkedIn and trying to set things up there, and then Meta, we're in Reddit. So it's, now you can experiment at scale because you're building an audience. You can set different offers, different call to actions, different creatives. And, if I had 3 of each times that, I'm at 27 different experiments like that, out having to build a new campaign for every single one.
And that's a crucial distinguisher, I think, because being in the ad buying business and having spent a lot of time in there's a lot of companies that allow you to create campaigns. There's not a lot that allow you to experiment, and specifically cross-platform. And that's the
Right.
thing you want to have.
Right. And yeah, so the cross-platform thing is the other really big thing because like today, if I'm in Facebook and I want to run campaign there, trying to pinpoint my ICP is really hard. The way I set my Facebook up 20 years ago, I haven't changed.
Yeah.
It's my oldest email I own. I don't check
It's
it
not going to work.
now. I don't think I changed my job title, and but my LinkedIn is up to date. But what metadata can do is actually it's called meta match. We can match these two audiences and in fact these experiences. So now you're starting to be able to create the same consistent experience across channels to the same people. So it's consistent. So it's this proprietary technology, I can tell you're thinking, to match your personal and your professional
Yeah,
channels.
you got my brain buzzing right now with the potentials, with all the potential that's in some. Because I think cracking that code of being able to target people. We always say, I mean, there's a common mistake, in my opinion, a common misconception. You don't advertise on. I've heard people say, don't advertise on Instagram because it's meant for people. No, those are the same CEOs, CMOs, purchasers, everybody that you're targeting for. And the only problem is finding them. But if you can now match things from LinkedIn and match them, merge them, and then target them even better, target them on Reddit for all I care. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah. And then having those insights is the kind of the third component to it, and that data that we talked about. So now you can pull that all together in your LLM and like triangulate all that with the power of also connecting to the internet and your CRM or your map. It You can just imagine like how cool.
I can see the vision, yeah, and I can see how that's useful for any type of campaign you're running. And I don't think it matters whether you're spending. I mean, you're going to have to be in to enjoy some of these luxuries like multi-campaign scaling and experiments. You need to have them, obviously. But hey, here's my tip: start using it, get the ROI with the benefits, and now you get the money to scale even more, even farther. Nah, Lisa, we're on time. I I wish I could bend your ear for like another half hour, an hour, because I feel like there's so much more in you that I would like to get to know and like to get people to see as well. It's been an incredible conversation, and I love the takes that you have. I'm curious to see where the world's going to take us. I'm curious to see how. I'm curious to see if we get ads in 6 months or not. I'm curious to see if we have if people go away or if we just need more of them and more knowledgeable ones. That being said, Lisa, it's been a pleasure. Lisa Sharapata, um, metadata.io. Is there anything else you'd like to call out for?
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot. So thank you so much for having me. And maybe 2.0 in April, 6 months from now, we'll see who wins the bet and continue the conversation.
We can bet a nice bottle of wine on it. I'll take that bet. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right.
All right.
Lisa, thank you
All
very
right.
much for being here.
Thank you.